The 1999 era was probably Prince's first Gesamtkunstwerk. This term is German for total work of art and it was popularized by composer Richard Wagner. And it describes art as a big cohesive, which includes music, paintings, any other form of art that combines a whole to tell a story. And this story is the 1999 era. It's told through the Vanity 6 album, it's told through the Time album, and we've all been talking about this all weekend, and it's told through his own album, of course, and the videos and the tours, etc. But also, very important in this total work of art is the artwork for the 1999 album cover. Hello everybody, my name is Edgar Kruize. I'm a music and entertainment industry journalist and an author. And today I want to talk to you about the artwork for the 1999 album. The artwork has often been obscured from view because of the CD era with the very small booklets and because of the streaming era we now live in. But the original 12-inch version, I have it right here, is such an interesting piece of art and I want to take a good look at it. And I suggest you view this presentation on full screen mode to get all the details. Now, full disclosure, I had been writing a thread about this specific subject on Twitter a few weeks ago. And originally on this spot, Chris Johnson was supposed to do a presentation. He had to back out, so Angela asked me to fill in. And we decided to do a presentation version of the thread that I was doing a few weeks ago. That said, let's dive in. The 1999 artwork is almost as mysterious today as back when it was released in 1982. But it's often overlooked and there's a plethora of reasons. One of which is that there are actually two different album covers, as the album has also had a single album variant. And that one has a cover shot by Alan Beaulieu and it vaguely resembles Tubeway's Army's Replicas album cover. Purely coincidental, according to Beaulieu. Both albums do have that Blade Runner vibe going on, both visual and lyrical. But it's the original album's artwork that I want to talk about. Who designed it is somewhat shrouded in mystery, but Prince definitely had a hand in it himself, as well as other creatives that came round to his house, like Jill Jones, who we've seen on stage this weekend during the Symposium, and Denise Matthews. In an article on The Fader, Gabriella Jimenez described the 1999 album cover as Prince's take on Dadaism, and most notably Francis Picabia's Loyo Cacodilate. That makes sense, as Picabia also had people coming around and doodling on his canvas. Supposedly, that's what happened on the 1999 artwork as well. Prince had this large board set up on which he himself added doodles and magazine cuttings, as well as other people. The first glimpse of what that board must have looked like came in 2018 at the travelling My Name is Prince exhibition. There was this little display as part of the exhibition that had some of the album's lettering designs for 1999 in it. Next to that, there was this little Polaroid. On there you could see the lettering we all know and love, as well as tons of other doodles, magazine cuttings, lettering and more. Little over a year later, the book The Beautiful Ones was released. In there we got a better view. There are a few minor differences though, possibly some of the magazine cuttings fell off over the years. In a reaction to said Twitter thread, Jill Jones commented that what we see here was essentially Prince's vision board and an amazing piece of cartographic mapping aligned with his journey. And indeed it's a fascinating artifact that gives us a glimpse on the creation of the artwork. The first Prince studio album, and one of the very few that does not have a portrait of him on the album cover. Eventually, only the name and the title were used on what became the final album artwork. It must be noted that on the final design, no one is credited for any of the artwork on the album or for the album layout, but without a doubt, a Warner employee was involved in the final album artwork design as well. In many ways, 1999 sees Prince standing on a crossroad in his career, and the 1999 album artwork reflects that. In many ways it hints back to the Dirty Mind and Controversy eras, more on that later, but the album artwork also gives us a glimpse into the future. Let's investigate each letter on the album artwork individually, and if necessary we'll pull out that Polaroid as well for extra context. So in the P there is a lot going on. Most notably it has mains. Are these lion manes, alluding to "I got a lion in my pocket" from the title track? When male lions start to grow manes, it signals the onset of sexual maturity. Although one could argue that Prince has already been sexually mature for quite a while at this point. So maybe these are horse manes, a nod to a pocket full of horses from Little Red Corvette? Who knows? If we look at that Polaroid or the larger mood board illustration, there's a Little Red Corvette on there. Note that there are 12 hash marks on the car. Are those tallying the jockeys that were there before me? On there we also find a picture of a woman with a horse's head. This looks to be a Shihuanaba, a shape-shifting spirit from Central American folklore that takes the form of an attractive, long-haired woman. She lures men in and then reveals her face to be that of a horse. I haven't got a clue what that's got to do with 1999 though. Anyway, back to that P, which also looks to be somewhat of a depiction of the title track. With a purple sky in there, Judgment Day is upon us, and you can see a city and the blue sky on the top of the circle sinking into a purple abyss, and the sun is sinking along with it. But you can also watch it the other way around, starting at the bottom, at dawn, and a new city emerging from the purge that was Judgment Day, again in 3 stages. And most notably, the male, female and peace symbols either being pulled down or emerging from the chaos. And then there are the lips, of course. These are Prince's own lips, cut out from the Controversy album cover. Knowing that gives you an impression of the size and scale of the initial artwork that was created. And Prince was a happy cutter, as the studs that can be seen in the R next to it also come from that very same Controversy album cover. And next to it we see 2 hands, one coming from the sky, is that the hand of God? And the other is Marilyn Monroe's. This was cut from a promotional photo or lobby card for the movie Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Other parts from that same picture are scattered throughout that bigger illustration. We see Marilyn's head on the bottom and her leg is used on the lower right side. And Monroe was a big influence in that era. If you pull out the poster that came with the Vanity 6 album, we see a picture of Marilyn Monroe in the background as well. This image is possibly shot in Prince's house, and it's nearly identical to the picture of the hookers from the previous year, and we see that very same image of Marilyn Monroe in the background. And let's not forget Jill Jones's look in that era. And as said, you see that other hand coming from the sky. It's possibly God's hand, and it reaches for a bass guitar. I know it's far-fetched, but I like to think that Prince sings about this part of the album cover in My Name is Prince, released a decade later. He's trying to rest Jill when he heard the sound like a guitar chord getting down. I tried to bust a high note, but I bust a string. My God was worried till he heard me sing. And on a side note, supposedly Prince wanted the album cover for 2009's MPLS sound to look like a continuation of the 1982-1999 album cover. The surfacing guitar is there as well, this time a real guitar, as is the city, as is the thunder, there are planets and there's a purple sky, and even the singles artwork from that era ties in with 1999. More on that later. Back to the actual 1999 album. The I has been replaced by a 1. Within that number there's nothing spectacular going on, but it must be noted that the number 1 is also often used to depict God. Or as the Bible says, the Lord is our God and is one. In numerology, the number 1 suggests that you are beginning to achieve true success in your life. And that's true for Prince as well here. 1999 is arguably the point where he transforms from a promising artist to a big superstar. This is the start of his breakthrough to the masses. The 1 does feature a football-shaped object which famously has a mirror and the revolution on it. Or does it? That's your mind playing tricks here. Because if you flip the picture, it actually reads the and revolution, and the N and the H are the wrong way around. Now look more closely at that shape. You'll notice that it's not a football, but it's something that looks like a closed eye. Could this be meant to represent the all-seeing eye of God? It being placed on the 1 suggests it might be. And within that eye there are 2 more eyes and something that looks like a soccer ball or maybe a tape reel. So even when the all-seeing eye is closed, it can still see. Next up is the N, which is depicted by a pair of pants. Looking at it, you'll notice that the N is incomplete and visually the C disguises that a bit. It looks like this image was cut from a wardrobe design. From a similar design we have this image of Brown Mark's coat. It's possibly a design by Louis Wells and Von Terry Yelks. Both joined Prince's team in the 1999 era. Notice the buttons here. This era was also the first time that Prince started wearing pants with this kind of button setting on it. And as said, the C is somewhat disguising the incomplete N. And it is of course the shape of a crescent moon, waning crescent, like on the one album version and on the inner sleeve artwork. And it also looks like a mouth with crooked teeth, reminiscent of the introduction of the Cheshire Cat in Disney's Alice in Wonderland. And the E is modeled after the name logo from the controversy era. In it you'll see what looks like to be a vagina, and from there a ladder is leading up to what looks to be Heaven's Gate. A stick figure has already climbed the ladder and is now taking its final steps towards the gate. So in a way we already see the theme from the song The Ladder here, and that ladder will be featured more prominently in the artwork for Around the World in a Day. There's another similar drawing on that vision board I'll show you later. You'll also notice that there is this odd spike attached to that E that actually comes from the original mood board, in which a sun was placed in between Prince and the word 1999. The sun was cut from the final design, but somehow this lone sunbeam survived. Now moving on to the album title. Now, where the I in Prince had been replaced by a 1, here the 1 has been replaced by, well, I don't need to explain what this is. But it remains interesting that Prince had no problem at all merging the sacred, the number 1, with the profane, a phallus. One could argue that boiling inside it is semen, ready to explode. Now moving on to the first 9, we see another I, again a cut from the controversy album cover. Moving down we see the first incarnation of what would later become Prince's iconic symbol, and eventually his name. Also it's interesting that the arrow is not yet connected to it, making the lower part look like a so-called globus cruciger, literally meaning cross-bearing orb. The symbol represents Christ's dominion over the world and has been used since the Middle Ages to depict earthly royalty, for instance a prince. And you'll notice that it's pointing upwards here, like the way it was used in medieval alchemist illustrations. In the early days of him using the symbol as a name, he often signed his autographs like this, pointing upwards. Moving on, the second 9 is rather plain, but it does feature the famous Rude Boy pin, once again taken from the Controversy album cover. But he was also wearing this very same pin on the Dirty Mind album cover, making this the third and final appearance of that pin on Prince album artwork. And speaking of the Dirty Mind artwork, that has also been cut to pieces for that initial mood board. We see Uptown, from the back of the album cover, pasted on here, as well as Dr. Fink's head. And one thing to notice here is that we once again see the stick figure climbing up the ladder, but also that there is purple rain pouring from the word Uptown and the cloud below it, foreshadowing the next project on the purple horizon. As we move on to the final 9 on the artwork, we once again see an eye cut out from the Controversy album artwork. If you open the album package, you'll find the vinyl labels also feature that very same eye. And a slightly altered version of that label was used on the Chaos and Disorder album cover, making this specific picture of Prince's eye the only one to feature on 3 different Prince album covers. And one can argue that the 2 controversy eyes in the 9s, combined with the closed eye in the 1, make an early appearance of the third eye within Prince's body of work. Here it's still closed, years later it will open. For instance, from MPL Sound comes the single for Dance For Me. If you look at the artwork, you'll see Prince's third eye open for the first time on his own artwork. And behind him we see the tag Purple Music, which is an obvious throwback to the 1999 era. But claiming the 1999 album is the first appearance of a third eye in Prince's artwork would be stretching it somewhat, as the original artwork clearly shows that the 2 controversy eyes were initially not supposed to be placed underneath that number 1. Now moving down to the lower part of the 9, we see a word that has been obscured by the rastering needed for printing. I'm very curious what that word is. If anyone has a clue, please let me know. And moving further down, we see a thunderbolt, a planet, graves being torn open, death by the sword, visions that come from the book of Revelations from the Bible. Which brings it all full circle with that vision board, which features yet another hand coming from the sky, pointing towards the word Revelation. Both E's are mirrored, and the T looks to be a small Prince symbol. And it also brings things full circle with the P that started this visual journey, as what we see here might very well be the new city that Prince sang about years later in the song 7, and that song is his musical take on the book of Revelations. And one of the buildings in that new city on the 1999 album cover closely resembles a building that we see in the 7 music video. So there's a lot of what we see here on the 1999 cover artwork, but that potentially carries over to other albums. In many ways it is a roadmap, or as Jill Jones put it, he manifested it himself by picturing it. The final line is also an example once again. See that glow that surrounds it? It very much resembles the glow around Prince's head at the end of the Purple Rain movie. Well, there are a few small things that I want to point out on that original concept image. The dancing woman, for instance, has the word DMSR written on her body. The bombs on the right are annotated with the word Y. And the iconic club First Avenue is mentioned here on the left. And on the right bottom, the image is tagged as being purple art. And purple art is the key here. Prince's full body of work should be considered the purple work of art. And that's not only the music, it's not only the videos, but his artwork plays a significant role in that as well, with this 1999 album cover as well, probably the most important album cover in his body of work. There's a lot more to discover, there's a lot more to explore, and there's a lot more that I haven't got a clue what it's all about, and I'd like to discuss. So if you have any ideas, things I've missed, just let me know. Follow me on Twitter or follow me on any of my other socials, and yeah, let me know what you think. I'm very curious. I want to talk more, but my time is up for today. So thanks very much for having me, and thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Bye.